All right, we are going to get started. So once again, thank you for joining How to Build a Data-Centric Business. My name is Blaze, and I'll be your moderator today. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping items. If you have any questions during the presentation, please input them in the questions box to your right in the panel, and we'll be sure to get to them at the end. If you'd like to join the conversation on Twitter, we're live tweeting this webinar. You can use the hashtag #CommerceMarketing, and the handle is @Criteo. Joining me today are two great speakers, Jonathan Margulies, Managing Director of the Winterberry Group, and Gilles Giudicelli, Head of Research here at Criteo. Jonathan and Gilles will be talking about three main challenges for the data landscape. First, we'll have a broad overview of what's happening in the world of data of today and tomorrow. And Jonathan will take us through some really interesting research that the Winterberry Group led recently. Then we'll switch gears and Gilles will present a few examples of what a data-centric company really looks like and may give us some ideas of what data can do that you really don't think about, daily data things, if you will. And then from there, Jonathan and Gilles will talk about how to build a data-centric culture from the ground up. So without further ado, I will hand it off to Jonathan.
Thank you very much, Blaze. I appreciate that intro and like to add my greetings to everyone joining. We appreciate you taking some time out of your busy day to spend with us. By way of really quick background, again, my name is Jonathan Margulies. I'm a managing director at Winterberry Group. We're a strategic consulting and research firm based in New York that focuses exclusively on issues concerned with data, technology, advertising, marketing, and how really all of those disciplines are intersecting to deliver better experiences for consumers and better performance for the businesses that are leveraging them. Many folks know us for our research collaborations with companies like Criteo and with trade associations all around the world. And that is primarily what I'm here to discuss today. As I mentioned, much of our research is concerned with the impact of data on enterprise organizations, marketers, and other groups that are looking to engage consumers in new and more impactful ways. Last year, we led a collaboration with two leading trade associations in the U.S., the Data and Marketing Association and the Interactive Advertising Bureau, as well as a group of sponsors to take a look at how data is impacting organizations in practical ways every day. I think that many of us who spend our time in advertising and marketing and media circles, we hear data referenced on a constant basis. And I've almost come to take for granted that information into our audiences and their interactions is so widely available and so very actionable for all sorts of different use cases. The truth of the matter, of course, is that data takes many forms. And how organizations use it to deliver better, more valuable marketing interactions likewise takes many forms. It varies based on, of course, vertical market. It varies based on the size of the company. Small enterprises do things necessarily differently than big enterprises. And it varies just as importantly based upon the background, in many respects, the age of the organization itself. Companies that are native to the digital world, that were built with technology and digital interaction touch points in mind, tend to look at the use of information in ways that are fundamentally different than those that predate the coming of digital media, and in many cases have to work around old organizational structures, technology limitations, and other ways of doing things in order to derive the best use of data. At the end of the day, what we know and what our research has told us many times is that data centrism, that is to say the move to be more responsive to an ongoing sort of continuous flow of information about audiences, transactions, interactions, and the like, is something that many organizations share in common, and in fact represents a real key business priority. We set out late last year to understand more about how that's actually happening in practice and what priorities marketers are identifying as they seek to grow their data centrism in the years ahead. And we published those reports earlier this year in a report called the Data Centric Organization. That publication is available for download for free. I believe it's actually available in the handout section of the panel to the right of your screen. We'll also post a link to it later if you want to get it that way. It contains a wealth of information derived from interviews and a survey of several hundred marketers, publishers, and other data users in the U.S. market. But I'd like to focus for a few minutes today just to sort of set the stage on some of what we see as the key priorities organizations are looking at as they think about their own data centrism and opportunities again. Anyone who went to business school, or for that matter, took an introductory level marketing class knows that marketing begins with what many call the 4 Ps. And classically, that is product, price, promotion, and placement, I believe, although it's actually not that important, as being essentially the centerpiece of the practice of marketing. Those are on their own sort of independent and, I guess, important pillars. You wouldn't have much marketing if you didn't have promotions or products, for that matter. But when we talk to marketers today about the challenges they confront, and talk to them about their organizational priorities, we talk about how they are actually spending their time, particularly as they think about this vast opportunity presented by audience data, which we know many are pursuing. We hear much more about what we would call a new 4 Ps, a new set of priorities that really crystallize not just how marketers are dividing their efforts, but perhaps how they ought to be strategizing and dividing their resources in order to deliver them the best results. In short, those 4 Ps come down to people, processes, platforms, and partners. People representing how talent is brought on board, trained, compensated, and developed over time in order to generate the best marketing results. Processes in terms of the organizational work, the alignment between different groups, the governance and sharing protocols that really define how marketing engages with product development, engages with finance, engages with all sorts of other entities within the enterprise in order to do their work. Platforms in terms of the technology platforms, the systems, the software that is playing an increasingly critical role in deploying right-time marketing to different audience groups. And then finally, partners representing that vast and growing network of supply chain entities, agencies, data suppliers, ad tech and marketing vendors, consultancies, other specialty partners who collectively support the execution of marketing programs, provide bandwidth that marketers very often need critically in order to get campaigns out the door, and serve as sources of innovation, new ideas, and dynamism to drive marketing is done. We believe very strongly, and we've heard through not just this research project, but many others in the past, that focusing and aligning on these entities really does represent a best practice in terms of both driving performance, but also driving growth, positive change in the marketing interaction. And so when we think about what data centrism is and how it's practiced, they represent really logical ways to ask that question. So for a few moments, I think useful to dig into some of what we learned during our research about how people are actually performing and what they see as their priorities in each of these 4 categories going forward. The first, and I think most essential to many enterprises, is people. And as I said before, that is the talent, the training, the compensation, and the ongoing engagement mechanisms that ensure that the marketing department itself has the right people focused on the right tasks to meet their underlying business needs. When you talk about people, invariably in marketing circles, the conversation comes down to skill sets, and that is to say the skill sets that are both in abundance, but more often than not, the skill sets that marketers say they need more of. Either they need to augment or they simply need more resources in order to accomplish the hard work, the complex work marketing in a more data-centric environment. Invariably today, that is about analytics. That is about finding not just some people who understand how to build predictive models, how to derive insights from vast quantities of both structured and unstructured audience information, how to apply that information to all sorts of downstream use cases, but finding enough of those people so they can essentially scale the marketing organization as the business scales around it. I think many people sort of in their gut know that we're dealing with a very severe data analytics shortage as it relates to train folks in the market. And that's critical for a few reasons. One, obviously, because analytics is playing an important role sort of in the guts of digital and even traditional marketing execution today, but also because bringing those analytic skill sets to bear is becoming an important requirement, not just at the developer level, not just at the data scientist level, but business unit leaders and marketing leaders and other functions that have been classically disassociated from data, like creative, content, program management, corporate leadership for that matter, have to have a fundamental understanding for what data analytics does and the value that it drives. And so long as we're still in a place where 87–88% of companies feel that they're somewhat gapped as it relates to those skills, you kind of get a sense for where those organizations will be looking to augment and build their teams in the future. Platforms, too, obviously play an enormously critical role. We know that the number of marketing tech and ad tech platforms has proliferated and is now close to 7,000, if you believe Scott Brinker's research released just last week. We know, too, that there is increasingly a platform to support virtually every function that the marketer may wish to deploy. And the question there is what kinds of functions are most useful in terms of deriving value from data. What our panel says, and this is after 2 years of asking similar questions, is that in many respects, marketers want it all. They want their underlying supporting technologies to support a wide range of functions connected to the collection, the management, the analysis, the segmentation, and the deployment of audience data for use across many channels. But predominantly, once again, it comes down to analytics. It comes down to cross-channel measurement and campaign attribution, being able to deliver insights in terms of what marketing expenditures are delivering what kind of downstream performance. And it's even coming down to basic data processing and hygiene, making sure that data is accurate, complete, and actionable for the chosen marketing application. These are needs that can be met obviously by dedicated tools, but vast numbers of respondents to our research say that it's also needs that they require all of their marketing technologies to support, if only at a high level. Partners play an increasingly important role in supporting that. We have thought of, and many marketers, older line marketers in some respects, still think of supply chain partners, folks in the agency world and the data services world, consultants like me, as sort of the unfortunate cost of doing business in marketing, folks that you have no choice but to hire and bring on to expand the bandwidth of your team and your reach into various channels. But the truth of the matter is that building a robust supply chain is increasingly a best practice for marketers, both because they provide that expanded capability set, they provide that expanded bandwidth that resource-constricted marketers often can't provide on their own, but as critically because they provide an insight into new ideas and best practices, a dynamism of sorts that few organizations can often handle, can incubate, keeping their eyes on business as usual, as so many do. When we reached out and asked our panel to tell us a little bit more about how their partners can best support their vision, we got an incredibly diverse array of answers, as you might imagine. Marketers come from many different places and they have many, many different priorities. But once again, at the end of the day, the key priority was all about analytics. It was about both the bandwidth to support complex analytics applications, but just in general, having more voices helping them infer exactly what data is telling them, helping them make better decisions, helping them refresh that decision-making approach as business conditions change, and just in general, imbue analytics as sort of a core function in every facet of their life as marketers and in every facet of what the business is doing. Making that happen requires organizational processes, protocols, and the like that ultimately are engineered to leverage data, make it available to all those partners through all those marketing platforms, and to give all of those people the resources they need to do their job. And so in a very real respect, this final P, processes, represents, I think, sort of the centerpiece of what data centrism is all about, and if you will, the key pillar upon which data centrism is ultimately built for companies that are moving that way. Companies come in all shapes and sizes, though. So how one would describe their processes as either supportive of data use or potentially a obstacle to good data use tend to vary significantly. And likewise, what organizations want to accomplish in terms of innovating their org structures vary just as well. More often than not, when you talk, for example, to older organizations, more complex organizations, those that have many lines of businesses, many products, often predating digital media, you talk about the need to dissolve silos, operating silos, data management silos that keep information in all sorts of different repositories where it can't be accessed for the collective good as a main priority. In newer organizations, though, more progressive, more digital focused, more technology driven, the problem is not necessarily silos so much as the need to develop integrated strategy to centralize data, to build joint infrastructure that provide for certain rules to guide how data is used, who can access it, who can share it, and what underlying use cases are appropriate for different types of audience information. Surprisingly, relatively few organizations have central strategies to guide all of the above. But working its way to data centrism is obviously, starts with sound central planning. And so we're hearing more now than ever before that planning is coming into picture as a major priorities for both very sophisticated data-centric providers and those that want to be very sophisticated data-centric providers. Of course, there are many, many shades of gray that dictate how that's actually being practiced today. And so I'm going to turn the mic over to Gilles, and he can give you a little bit of a sense of how businesses are doing that out there in the wild. Gilles?
Hi, thanks, Jonathan. That was great insights. So to build on the points that Jonathan made, there's two questions that I would love to address today, which are, first, what does good look like when we talk about data centricity? And I would like to give you a few examples of what data centricity done properly looks like. And second, and even more importantly, how do we get there? So what does a data-centric product look like? And the answer is very often they don't look like data at all. Typically, the data goes into improving user experience, but it's invisible to the users themselves. So we're using lots of data-centric products every day without realizing it. And one example that comes to mind is Netflix. So we don't turn on Netflix and think, wow, that's a data-centric product or company. But what we're attracted to is all the personalized content out there. So you have, on Netflix, you have about more than 20,000 individual genres. You have things that, there are 33 genres alone for horror movies. And as you can see on the screen, there are things that you really cannot make up, like emotional, independent dramas for hopeless romantics. So the question is, how does Netflix split its content into genres that make sense in terms of user satisfaction? Because putting things into bucket makes sense only if it results in more time spent looking at content. So how do they come up with that? And the answer is they use sophisticated machine learning algorithms, which base themselves on explicit user signals. Okay, if I thumb up a series, this is a good sign. What they call implicit user signals. If I binge for 3 days in a row on a series, that's a good sign as well. And a very, very large amount of manually curated data that about the content itself, what happens minute by minute, and they have whole teams that do that all the time. And then they split those users and the movies into clusters, and the result is recommendation that actually result in people watching more content. And incidentally, that's also how the company creates original content based on that data. Second example, Spotify. So if you use Spotify, you're listening to data a lot too. They have advanced algorithms that allow them to detect your tastes and make recommendations, and that's how they can build such a great product. And with Spotify, data is the product. They built an organization that is data centric, and they flourished. Today you have 140 million subscribers, and half of them, which is to say how sticky the service is, half of them are paying subscribers. At Criteo, we're doing something that could be compared with that, and we do it with marketing. That is, with ads, you know that personalization is what makes the difference. And how do you personalize? You personalize it through data. So what we do is we allow our clients, typically retailers and brands, to have access to that data-centric approach to marketing. And how do we do that? So if you think about your shopping experience on the internet, if you see irrelevant ads, you barely glance at them. The products that get your attention are the products that are related to your actual interest. So how do we detect that? We have the purchase intent signals that we collect, and we have the algorithms that allow us to weigh those different signals against one another in order to decide what is going to make a difference from a user behavior standpoint, what is going to lead people to maximize their relevance, to maximize their propensity to purchase. And the results is ads that are super personalized and more effective. And to build on that, basically, data is what fuels the progress at many companies today, and in some cases, literally. So what you see on the screen right now, it looks like a grasshopper. It's actually the rocket, the reusable rocket from SpaceX, and they're pretty much the first that managed to get rocket boosters, to go back to Earth and be reused, which is going to create a great opening in space travel. And how did they do that? They did that through data. That is, there's not a pilot. It's not piloted by a human. It's piloted by machine learning, which has taught the rocket boosters how to land themselves. So a data-centric company is built on data from the ground up. To become data-centric, companies have to understand how to understand and collect the data at each touch point. And collecting it means also making sure it's clean, it's deduplicated, it's secure, and it's compliant from a legal standpoint. The data then has to be analyzed and activated to create great personalized experiences, and those experiences have to connect across every channel to the right audience. But the thing is, it's easier said than done. So how do we get there? We know everyone agrees that data is important to the company's success, but what takes time, effort, and dedication is creating the framework that allows companies to go there. So challenge by challenge, the first one would be, how do you hire talent? How do you hire talent that is going to take you closer to that objective of having a data-centric company? Jonathan said that data centricity, data centrism, as he says, is not just for engineers, for the whole company, but engineers are a key piece of the puzzle. And here's an example of how you would typically hire the right people in engineering. So that's a standard procedure for interviewing. You're looking at the skill set of potential data candidates. What do you need? What do you need to make sure? You need to make sure they have a mix of hacking, research, math, and programming in no particular order. Whatever you need that makes them a flexible candidate. Then you need to explore how they approach the data challenges. You need to present them with a data problem, and have them give a presentation of how they would solve it, how they think. So that would be typically a typical hiring process. Jonathan, perhaps you have stuff to add based on the results from the study.
No, I think you're right on there, Gilles. I mean, this is a discipline where the pace of change, that is to say, both in raw engineering skills and the applications to which data can be applied, is changing rapidly on a week-to-week, month-to-month basis. And so getting a sense of where your candidates' minds are in terms of kinds of applications they've supported in the past and their perspective on what data can do in the future, their creativity in terms of building solutions to that end, are enormously important. To go to the theme you mentioned just a moment ago, though, these kinds of questions can also be extended to other marketing hires that are outside the realm of engineering. You may not dig quite as deep into their hacking and their programming skills, but asking perspectives on how data is likely to, for example, change your business over the forthcoming years, the span of use cases they have engaged with in the past, and how they would imagine innovating the corresponding use cases in your environment, are questions that are really fair game for almost anybody entering the modern marketing department. And so I think this as a general roadmap is right on. I think you could make a copy of this one, though, and replicate it for virtually any hire, so long as you're keeping the level of specificity at the right and appropriately strategic level to the role.
Thanks, Jonathan. The next part is technology. So you have a lot of data management solutions to choose from, and we know that technology plays a huge role. Integration, analysis, visualization tools. This is what can help you fully take control of your data strategy. And Jonathan, perhaps you can elaborate in the research, in the Winterberry research. We see that there is a growing tendency to lean on external technological partners in addition to supply chain partners. Would you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that is the key theme there, is that we're now in an environment where there are nearly 7,000 independent standalone technology platforms geared to support marketing in some way. And you kind of think about this in historical terms. 7-8 years ago, we were in the hundreds, and we're now in 7,000. Virtually all of them engineered to interact with audience data in some way or another. The challenge for folks looking to build data centrism is to make the right bets, not just on which tools to engage with, and not in deciding which tools represent sort of best-in-class solutions, and which are either challenger brands or engineered more to niche-ier applications, so much as it is building the right alignment, building the right custom stack of tools that's going to make sense for their business and their applications. To a certain extent, you want to be guided by what the tools can do. You want to be guided by how they ingest data, how they move data from function to function, how they integrate with each other, recognizing, of course, that few platforms are going to serve as exclusive solutions for any marketer or any brand. But piecing these elements together has become perhaps the most daunting challenge facing the CMO and the folks that work for the CMO today. And so that absolutely requires familiarizing yourself with many of these names and understanding what they can do for you. But I think at a higher level, it starts with mapping out what you want technology to accomplish, how well your current state technology platforms are meeting your fundamental need, where you see that need evolving over the next few years, and then assessing, potential contributions based upon not just, current state value, but roadmap, development plans, and the like. That is complex, time-consuming work. It's one of the reasons that marketing technology specialists are, growing in popularity and frequency in enterprises today. But for perfectly good reason. These tools represent, in many respects, the lifeblood of how marketing is done in the digital economy today. And so, focusing on how they match up, how they align, where their utilization is going to move in the future, should be, the top priorities for any marketer.
Thanks. Then after the tooling comes the processes. So the processes, to achieve data centrism, you should start with an audit of all your current data. At Criteo, we have been doing that, and I can testify that it's a long and painful process, but the end result is worth it. So when your data is totally centralized, and I insist again on the centralization part of the process, you can act faster, you can get better results. You're not bothered by different layers of technology that are not compatible with each other, etc. And this is for the greater good. And how do you get there? Training. So training, especially in the light of regulations like GDPR, employees should know that, and every employee in the company should know how data links back to their role, what is their relationship with data, and that applies to people who are in engineering, but also people who are in sales, people who are in product, people who are in research. And the same could apply also about defining roles, showing how data tracking can help people make smarter decisions, and that can lead to more centralization too. So when everyone is bought into the importance of data for their decisions, that's when you can say that you have a data-centric organization. Jonathan, on your end, how would you advise companies to work through data-centric processes?
So Gilles, I think your initial guidance was right on, and I would emphasize 10 times the pain that can sometimes be associated with that data audit part. But I'd add as well that it is a really, really critical step in the process. It is unfortunately sort of the cost of doing business in a data-centric world, is to understand what you have at your disposal, the rules that guide how you can use that information, and then make some stark decisions around whether your data assets have some longevity to them, whether they suffer from reach, quality, accuracy issues, things like that. What I'd also suggest in terms of how you build and how you align processes for the long haul is that simply understanding the data assets themselves is only one part of the equation. The other part of the equation is really about taking stock of how well your organization works today. And sometimes that's as simple as going through and sort of mapping the flow of data assets from origination through usage as they make their way through their organization. There are in many respects human or technological equivalents to data that you can use to get a better sense for where information moves and how well those processes are working in practice. Doing that kind of gap analysis, actually visualizing what the processes look like, where there are handoffs of information, where there are necessary feedback and what we call feed-forward loops that ensure that the right prerequisites are being met, can tell you a lot about your overall efficacy and help you make corrections to processes that are broken or simply suboptimal in supporting your needs. If you can do that kind of work, if you can do the hard work of self-assessment, if you can audit your data, and critically, if you can build a map of your desired business outcomes and the use cases that correspond to each of them, then you begin to make some real progress towards that kind of data centricity. I'll offer the caveat that very few companies, even those of vast resources and expertise, can do that kind of work on their own. For a lot of reasons. It's complex, it's time consuming. Folks have day jobs and then other things to do to occupy their time. But also it's often very, very difficult to make those kind of stark self-analyses, decisions and judgment calls about your own processes and your own way of doing things. That's one of the areas where we've seen a lot of focus on leveraging partners to come in and offer guidance on both best practices and provide, that tough love analysis of how things are working and how perhaps they ought to evolve in order to meet the needs of tomorrow.
Tough love is a great word, and you provide me with a good segue into partners. So on our end at Criteo, when it comes to partners, what we work hard for is to make sure that we help companies become more data centric. That is, we ourselves have a data centric approach where data is our backbone, and we put it at the disposal of our clients to help them achieve that. And the way we do it is with what we call the Criteo commerce marketing ecosystem. So the Criteo marketing, our commerce marketing ecosystem is how we empower our partners to access data to 1.2 billion active shoppers every month, and we give them access to a pool of more than $550 billion in annual sales. So that's the data we have access to, and we help our clients access as well. And we've built tools that help you activate that data at every stage. So you create a life cycle for all of your customers. At the acquisition stage, first stage, people don't know, we have a product that is called Criteo Customer Acquisition, which allows you to leverage intent data, but for customers that haven't been on your website, that you don't have first-hand knowledge of. After that, you can convert those people using our product called Criteo Dynamic Retargeting, which is our historical product. And then you can re-engage them using your CRM database with customer audience match. So you're using your own data and you link it with the commerce marketing ecosystem in order to get better recommendation and better relevance. And ultimately, by becoming data centric, you can build a commerce marketing strategy that helps you understand your shoppers first, deliver better experiences, and not just on one channel, but on all the available channels. This is one of the benefits of having a unified base of people, not just cookies or not just computers. So you deliver better experiences, and you connect with them on each channel at every step of their journey to purchase.
Great. Thank you so much, Gilles. Thank you, Jonathan. Now is the time for questions, and before we dive into those, I'd like to remind everyone that you can download the full Data Centric Organization 2018 report at bit.ly/data-centric-report. It's also in the handouts, so if you're in that panel, you can click the handout section and you can see the PDF of that report as well as the slides that we just presented. So to get started, let's just go through, this is a good question to kind of have a primer on what your ideal data team would look like. So, if someone is building a data team, how do they start that process? They have no data people. What's the first hire they make? Jonathan, you want to take that, and then we can hear what Gilles has to say?
Sure. I mean, the answer is not as straightforward as unfortunately I think we would all like, because the truth of the matter is what companies are looking to accomplish with data varies significantly, and just as data itself varies. Relatively few marketers of almost any size have essentially no data resources to work with. And that's not to mean that everybody has engineers and programmers and business heads who are sort of trained in these applications. But because managing customers, even in very basic ways, CRM files, email files, and the like, is part and parcel to how business is practiced today. Virtually everyone has at least a base level competency. But as you think about, building an infrastructure that's scalable, that supports marketing and commerce across potentially many, many different actionable channels, clearly you need to think about your engineering resources. You need to think about process management resources, and I think critically, you need to think about the stakeholders who come from, if you will, the business itself, whether they are associated with brand first and foremost, whether they are specialists in marketing technology, whether they hold chief data officer or somewhat less grandiose titles but that are otherwise effectively charged with looking over data on behalf of the own organization, and letting them guide the kinds of investment and allocation that really dictate how data is going to be used. How you ultimately staff engineers to support multiple applications and what their lines of reporting are is a conversation so complex and so different to different organizations that we could fill multiple webinars just talking through the scenarios. But at the end of the day, I think data centrism is about not just getting into the nuts and bolts of how you parcel out the information itself, so much as it is making sure that the organization is being responsive to what their audiences are telling them and what those insights can drive across lots of different functions. And that starts with making sure that people who embrace that information and that insight are sitting in those senior roles and have access to those insights. So I would suggest, and this is at least somewhat general advice, but start at the top and start at the top by making sure that those folks have a healthy appreciation for what data can tell them, making sure that they have regular access to insights to inform their decision making, and make sure they have a perspective on and understand essentially the business case for data that is going to support hiring and developing of folks at various functional levels in the organization.
If I may jump in here, what we saw in the 2016 wave of the Winterberry study is that people were hiring business, analytical people. Like a lot of analytical people got hired, and in 2017, so the year after, what you saw is that data analysts were still top priority, but there were two emerging functions that I thought are interesting to mention, and that's for that specific question. These are people who do data hygiene. So people realize that okay, they're going to have to be dealing with messy data sets, and data hygiene now has come to the fore as one of the priority, and also managing partners and suppliers. So if perhaps someone starting today could take into account not just the need to analyze data, not just the need to do nice visualization, but the need to operate from a clean database, and the need that will arise to partner with external parties, with third parties.
Great. I think that's a great point, Gilles. I mean, in many respects, data hygiene is one of the oldest data functions around, but I think, and this is just a function of how the industry is maturing and how people are getting smarter about their own application. If the data that is sort of coursing through your many platforms and applications isn't good and isn't useful data, then the value of the whole enterprise is undermined. So in terms of that, it tells you a lot about why people are putting the focus there, and it's one I'd expect to stay strong for quite a while.
The path to maturity may be to go from data cosmetics to data hygiene.
Right.
Awesome. So we've got time for just one more. I like this one. This is kind of a curveball. So Gilles, we'll give you that one first. So say that someone is in the real estate space. Now, how do they get started? What's the important data to focus on in the real estate space if they're trying to clean something up, if they're a real estate firm?
Okay, I'm not a specialist of the real estate business, so
it's all conjecture. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's all conjecture, but I would focus on getting the product feeds right, making sure that every flat, every house I have on offer is connected to the central database with as much information as I possibly can, in order to feed a centralized system, which is going to then make recommendations to potential buyers or renters, which are going to be as effective as possible. At Criteo, we have a product that does that. That is, you have real estate listings, and the system sends you product recommendations exactly as it would do with clothes and shoes and stuff like that. So, and it works very well. But the first step is to have the information in the first place.
Right. Great. Jonathan, anything to add there?
Yeah, I mean, I think Gilles sort of hit the nail right on the head. I am also not a real estate specialist, but I think it comes down to what are the generic sort of market insights that are important to you. That is to say, transactional data on what is being bought and what is being sold, so you understand the way your market is moving around you. And then on a more granular basis, how is your respective audience, the kind of people that you're targeting through your digital channels, through your offline channels, email, direct mail, and the like, how are they responding to various interactions? Can you understand more about behaviors on your digital properties, on other digital properties? Can you infer anything about their response to your various offers and the like? And does it tell you anything both about how individual segments of the population in your market behave, or perhaps how you should be tailoring your respective appeal, offer, and messaging to those folks? That's not prescriptive advice, by the way. That's specific to the real estate market itself. It could be applied to virtually anything, but I don't necessarily think that market or any market behaves, fundamentally different in that regard. So much of this is about trying to get ahead of what audiences are likely to value and what they're likely to want to engage with, and deliver experiences across all sorts of different touch points that engage in ways that are one step above what the competition is doing. Now that competitive bar is, of course, always getting higher, because we are all, in many respects, becoming more data-centric every day. But I think thinking about it in terms of the audiences at the high level, at segment level, and even individually, thinking about it at the marketplace in terms of what's driving transaction. Some of that can most definitely be automated and visualized and provided on a continuous basis. Some of it, particularly transaction data, is more batch oriented and requires some more manual interactions in order to go out and grab the insights. And of course, divining the insight on how you take one and how you take the other, and you make business decisions on it. You can apply all sorts of machine learning technology in order to do some of that, but at the end of the day, your business judgment is something that you do in your head. That's why data centricity isn't data automation everywhere all the time. They're sort of different, but I think the opportunity is just as profound in that business as in any other, and the need to build the processes, the platforms, make sure the people are there, and put the right platforms in order. Is the same as any other market. So it's a specific question, but I think it's a good question and one that can apply in a lot of other spaces.
Great. Yeah, I think that's a great note to end on. So we will be sending this recording out to everyone who attended, so keep an eye out for that. Otherwise, have a great rest of the day. Thanks for attending.
Thank you.